2 decades after my ex left, he came knocking on my door again. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. 20 years after he vanished, my ex stood on my porch and said, "Mia, I need you to save me." I was not dressed for ghosts. Hair in a messy bun, Liam's old college hoodie, grocery bags cutting into my fingers. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of ordinary that takes years to build. Behind me, our little rental smelled like garlic and laundry detergent. In front of me, Daniel looked like a before and after photo where both halves lost. He'd always been annoyingly handsome, boy band pretty with dimples he weaponized. Now the dimples were carved into a gaunt face, silver strands at his temples, a faint tremor in the hand gripping the porch rail. His leather jacket hung off him like it belonged to someone younger, someone who hadn't met gravity or consequence. My brain did that static buzz thing, like when a call drops mid-sentence. For a second I was 20 again, heart sprinting, waiting for his car to pull up outside my dorm. Then Liam's voice floated from the kitchen. "Babe, you coming?" "Pastas." I nudged the door almost shut with my hip. 1 second, Daniel's eyes flicked toward the sound. "You live with someone," he said. Not a question, just an inventory entry. "Good. That means you're stable." The nerve of this man, using my stability like it was a resource he'd prepaid. "What do you want, Daniel?" I whispered. I hated how my voice shook on his name, like my vocal cords remembered it better than my mind did. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. "I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I need you to say we did something together, back then. Just on paper. If you don't, I might go to prison." Somewhere in the house, a timer beeped cheerfully, like this was any other night. In 20 years, I'd become a social worker, learned how to separate crisis from manipulation, need from entitlement. I'd build a life out of boundaries and small, safe routines. I had everything to lose if I let him in. My job, my home, my hard-won peace. "Why would I ever lie for you now, Daniel?" I asked. He stared at me with the same eyes that once promised me forever, and he said the one sentence that cracked the door I'd sworn to keep locked. "If you don't help me, Mia, they're coming after you next." I didn't sleep much that night. After I finally got Daniel off my porch with a promise that wasn't really a promise. "I'll think about it, okay? I need time." Liam gave me a look that said he'd heard enough to be worried, but not enough to be reassured. "That him?" he asked quietly, once the door was locked and the deadbolt slid home. "Yeah." I twisted my engagement ring, a nervous habit. Liam wasn't flashy. He'd proposed in our kitchen with a crooked smile, and a ring he'd clearly researched to death. Steady, pragmatic Liam. The anti-Daniel in every way that mattered. "You want to talk about it?" he offered. "Not yet," I said. "If I start, I won't stop." Later, when he fell asleep with his hand warm at the small of my back, the past unspooled anyway. I was 18 when I first met Daniel, waiting for the late bus outside the community college. My headphones died mid-song, and he slid onto the bench like he'd been cued. "You know that thing you do with your foot?" he'd said. I blinked. "What thing?" "You tap 3 times before the bus gets here. Superstitious or just psychic?" I'd laughed, cheeks hot, instantly aware of my own limbs. He bought me coffee from the vending machine that spat out something approximating cocoa, and we talked until my bus came and his didn't, because he'd already missed 3 just to keep the conversation going. We were stupid and young, and certain the world would rearrange itself around our plans. We mapped out an apartment we'd share someday, down to the color of the dish towels. He wanted to be a photographer. I wanted to be a therapist for kids like us, I'd said, the ones who grew up counting the days between moods in their parents' faces. It ended on a Tuesday, too. 1 text, "We should talk." 1 meeting at the cafe where we'd carved our initials into a table. 1 speech about how he needed to figure himself out, and it wasn't fair to drag me into his mess. And then, nothing. No calls answered. No social media. Just a voicemail from an unfamiliar number 3 weeks later that I'd never played for anyone, not even Kayla. His voicemail ended with, "If anything happens, it's not because I stopped." The next day, I did something very adult and very stupid. I went to work like nothing had happened. My caseload didn't care that a ghost had materialized on my porch. Kids still needed emergency placements. Parents still missed supervised visits. Supervisors still wanted neatly formatted notes in the system. I moved through the day on autopilot, my empathetic professional voice covering the tremor underneath. At lunch, Kayla plopped down across from me in the break room, her tray a graveyard of fries. We'd been friends since high school, which meant she knew the Daniel story in bullet points, not footnotes. You look like you saw a demon, she said. Or your ex, same category. I snorted. Funny you say that. Her eyebrows shot up. No, absolutely not. Don't you dare tell me he showed up, I said. At my house. Last night. She stared. With flowers or a crowbar? Neither. Just a favor he wants that could get me indicted. That night, I texted Daniel a time and place because apparently I enjoy making my therapist earn her copay. We met at the old cafe by campus, the one that had gone from grunge to gentrified. The table with our carved initials was gone, replaced by reclaimed wood and overpriced matcha. He was already there, fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, eyes tracking me from the doorway. You came, he said softly. Don't read into it. I replied, sliding into the seat. Talk. He inhaled, exhaled, like he was about to dive underwater. Back then, he started, after I left, I got in over my head financially. I took out a loan using your name. I told myself I'd pay it off fast, you'd never know. But things spiraled. My stomach dropped. You committed fraud in my name. I panicked, he said. Now there's this lawsuit. If you say you knew, that you agreed to co-sign, it becomes a civil thing, not criminal. They'll go easier. On both of us. On both of us. Like we were still a we, like 20 years hadn't happened. I stared at him, feeling the old familiarity overlaying a stranger's face, and something about his timeline snagged in my brain like a thread on a nail. Daniel, I asked slowly, where exactly were you living when you took out that loan? That was when I moved to Chicago, he said quickly. Too quickly. I was crashing with a friend near Logan Square. Remember I told you I might go there? I did remember. I also remembered that conversation being hypothetical and 3 months before he actually disappeared. I pulled out my phone and opened an email I'd dug up that afternoon during a stolen 5 minutes between case notes. An old credit alert from years back, the kind I'd ignored in my 20s because adulthood felt optional then. It listed an address tied to my name that I knew I'd never lived at. Funny, I said, turning the phone so he could see the screen. Because this says you were very much here in town when someone using my social went shopping for debt. His face flickered. Guilt, irritation, something darker, and then smoothed. Mia, I was all over the place, he said. Couch surfing, traveling for shoots. Maybe I got the months mixed up. Kayla's voice echoed in my head. He was always good at rewriting history mid-sentence. Look, he said, leaning forward, lowering his voice like the reclaimed wood had ears. I screwed up. I was young and stupid and terrified. But if you don't help, the lawyers will pull you in anyway. This way, you're prepared. Prepared. Like he was doing me a favor by handing me my own noose. That night, Liam waited until we were both in bed, the room dim except for the streetlight stripe across the ceiling. Did you see him? He asked. Yeah. And he wants me to tell a judge I co-signed a loan I never heard of? I said. Liam was quiet for a long time. You're not seriously considering it, he said finally. I stared at the ceiling, feeling that snagged thread pull tighter. I don't know what I'm considering yet. The thought sat in my gut like a swallowed battery, humming. I kept replaying every form I'd ever filled out, every job background check, wondering if some clerk along the way had seen a red flag and stamped me barely acceptable without saying why. I wasn't just angry. I was embarrassed that something this big could have been lurking under my life like mold under paint. What I really meant was, I didn't know what else he'd done with my name. I lasted exactly 48 hours before texting Daniel again. Liam had gone to visit his brother, leaving me with a quiet apartment and too much brain space. I told myself I wanted clarity, which is just denial with a diploma. I suggested we meet somewhere neutral, public, impossible to romanticize. We ended up walking around the lake near my old campus, where ducks and undergrads floated with similar levels of purpose. The fall air was crisp enough to bite. So, I said, hands shoved in my pockets. Why me? You had 20 years to grow a conscience. Why show up now? Daniel kicked a pebble, watching it skitter. Because you're on the paperwork, he said. They traced the signature. If I go down alone, they might still come after you. This way, we control the story. You mean we coordinate the lie? I corrected. He flinched. It's not all a lie, he said. We were together. We shared expenses. It's not like I made you up. But you did, I said quietly. You made up a version of me who'd co-sign a loan she never saw, then disappeared before the bill came. We paused near a bench where we'd once spent an entire afternoon arguing about whether love was a choice or a chemical reaction. 20-year-old us had voted for chemistry. 38-year-old me now suspected a lot of it was paperwork. Remember that fight we had senior year? I asked. About whether you'd tell me if something was really wrong. He frowned. You mean when you accused me of keeping secrets about your surprise party? No, I said. The one where I said I'd rather be hurt with the truth than protected with a lie. He blinked, then looked away. Mia, I had reasons, he murmured. You don't understand what was happening then. Then make me understand. I snapped, louder than I meant to. The wind picked up, tossing leaves across the path like confetti from a party we were 20 years too late to attend. My chest ached with that specific old grief you only get from someone who knew you before you knew yourself. For a heartbeat, I thought he was finally going to tell me why he really left. Instead, he laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. More like a bark, hoarse and bitter. You really think there's a version of that story that makes me look good? He asked. Trust me, Mia. You'd hate me more with the details. I already hate you plenty, I said. Give it a shot. He shook his head. It's not about hate. It's about liability. He checked his phone, the conversation shutting down in real time. I have to go. Can we talk again tomorrow? I'll text you. He left me at the path fork, walking away with the same hunched urgency I remembered from the day he'd broken up with me in that cafe. Back then, I told myself he was crying. Now I suspected he was just running. That night, I tried to focus on Netflix with Liam, but my brain kept replaying Daniel's phrasing. Liability. Controlling the story. Them coming after you next. When Liam went to shower, I did what every therapist tells people not to do. I snooped. Not through Daniel's stuff. I didn't have access, but through my own digital skeletons. I dug up the old credit alert again, clicked through the links I'd ignored for years, followed the breadcrumb trail of click here for more information, until I hit a login portal for a bank I'd never used. At the bottom of the notice was a line I'd somehow skipped before. It listed a reference number for correspondence mailed to MIA Santos or current resident at an address across town. A cheap part of town. The kind of place with peeling paint and security bars. The next day at lunch, I slid the printout across the table to Kayla. Oh, hell no, she said, scanning it. You're not just in his mess, you're laminated to it. I want to see that address, I said. Just to know. We drove over after work, the sun sinking behind low, tired buildings. The address belonged to a squat duplex with overgrown bushes and a fading plastic tricycle tipped on its side. That your old place? Kayla asked. I shook my head. Never seen it before. My maiden name was scrawled beneath a stranger's last name on it. Up close, the marker ink on the mailbox had bled into the metal like it had been there for years. Above my maiden name, Hernandez, block letters pressing hard enough to almost dent the paint. Kayla whistled low. So either you lived a secret life as Mrs. Hernandez, she said, or someone thought you did. We knocked. No answer. The curtains twitched in the right-hand unit, then stilled. After a minute, a tired-looking woman cracked the door just enough to glare at us. We're not selling anything, I said quickly. Sorry to bother you. Did a Daniel Reyes ever live here? Or anyone named Mia? Her eyes softened a fraction at my name. You're the second person asking about him this month, she said. He was here a long time ago. Always carrying cameras, always late on rent. So he did live here, I said, throat tight. Was he alone? She hesitated, then shrugged. Sometimes there was a woman. Dark hair, pregnant at one point. They argued a lot. Then one day they were just gone. Landlord changed the locks. Back in Kayla's car, the puzzle pieces started forming a shape I hated. Pregnant. My name on the mailbox. My social on the loan. Okay, level with me, Kayla said as she pulled away from the curb. Is there any universe where you think you could have had his kid and forgotten? I shot her a look. No. We had one pregnancy scare senior year, remember? It ended with me sobbing in your bathroom over a negative test, and you swearing you'd help me raise a cat instead. Right, she said. So whose name was he using here, and why does it look like yours? That night, I couldn't stand pacing our apartment again, so I drove to my Aunt Rose's place. She lived in the same small house she'd had my whole life, floral curtains and holy candles in the windows. Rosa had known Daniel in the early days, back when he was just the charming boy who picked me up in his beat-up Honda and pretended not to be intimidated by my noisy family. She'd fed him rice and beans, listened to him talk about art and escape, and later held me while I cried when he disappeared. If anyone had footage of that time stored in their brain, it was her. When I told her Daniel was back, her reaction wasn't surprise. She inhaled like someone who'd spent 20 years waiting for this shoe. Rosa made coffee before she answered any questions, which was her way of stalling and praying simultaneously. The kitchen smelled like burnt sugar and worry. "I always hoped this day wouldn't come," she said, setting a mug in front of me. "But hoping is not a strategy, Mija." "You knew something," I said. "Back then," she sighed, rubbing her knees. "I knew enough to be angry, not enough to fix it." Rosa told me about a night 20 years ago when Daniel had shown up at her door alone, eyes red, hands shaking. I'd been at home, grounded for mouthing off to my mother. Daniel had asked to speak to Rosa as an adult, not just me as boyfriend. He said his father had given him two choices, she said. Marry the girl he got pregnant, or get cut off completely. No school, no help, no place to live. He said the girl's family was furious. There was some incident. Money owed, maybe worse. Pregnant, I repeated numbly. Melissa Hernandez? Rosa frowned. I never heard her last name. Only that she was older, worked with his father somehow. He said he'd made a mistake, but there was a baby and he couldn't abandon it. My chest burned. So he abandoned me instead. He asked what to do, Rosa said softly. I told him he needed to be honest with you, that secrets rot everything they touch. He promised he would talk to you the next day. He had talked to me. He just hadn't told me about the pregnancy, the ultimatum, the other life forming like a shadow behind ours. I thought he'd come clean, Rosa said. Then I heard he'd left town. After that, your mother forbade his name. I didn't want to hurt you more by telling you half a story. So he married her, I said, picturing the duplex, the tricycle, the name on the mailbox. He married her and used my name for his debts. Rosa's eyes filled. People repeat the harm they grew up in unless they do the work, she said. His father controlled with money and secrets. Your father did too, in different ways. Men like that don't just stop. Her words settled like stones in a river, redirecting everything I thought I knew. If there was a baby, somewhere Daniel had left someone else behind too. I left Rosa's house with my head buzzing and my heart strangely steadier. Knowing there had been a reason didn't make the hurt smaller, but it made the shape of it less amorphous. Abandonment with context is still abandonment, but at least it has edges. Back home, Liam was at the table with his laptop, spreadsheets glowing. He shut it as soon as he saw my face. Talk to me, he said. So I did. About the pregnancy, the ultimatum, the duplex. About my name on the mailbox and the loan. I watched his jaw clench harder with each new layer. So he blew up your life to do the bare minimum for someone else, Liam said. And now he wants you to help him not face consequences for that. Romantic. His sarcasm was a comfort. It meant he was still here, in this present, not competing with some ghost of Daniel. The next day, I called the number on the credit notice and, after being bounced between departments like a cursed pinball, eventually reached someone in special investigations. A woman with a calm, precise voice confirmed my full name and date of birth, then said, Ms. Santos, are you aware you are listed as a co-defendant in an upcoming fraud case? My mouth went dry. I know. I was not aware. She cleared her throat. Mr. Reyes has indicated that you were a willing co-signer on the original loan. Our records show payments stopped 12 years ago. The current matter involves potential misrepresentation and identity misuse. If you contest his version, we'll need a statement. Contest his version. In other words, pick a side. After I hung up, my phone lit up with a text from Daniel, as if summoned. Can we talk? Hospital on 8th. Outpatient wing. Please. My first thought was that he was lying about being sick to get my sympathy. Kayla texted while I stared at his message, thumbs hovering uselessly. Do not go alone, she wrote in all caps, like she was shouting through the screen. I told Liam about the hospital text, expecting a flat no, an ultimatum of his own. Instead, he just sighed and grabbed his keys. If you're going, he said, we're going. Plural. I'm not letting you walk into another one of his messes without a witness this time. My second thought, which scared me more, was that he wasn't lying at all. The outpatient wing smelled like hand sanitizer and resignation. We found Daniel in a plastic chair by the vending machines, a paper bracelet circling his wrist like proof he wasn't faking this part, at least. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders slumped, a folder clutched in his lap. When he saw me, something like relief cracked across his face. When he noticed Liam at my side, it faded into wariness. "This is Liam," I said. "My fiancé." Daniel nodded stiffly. "Right. Of course. How sick are you?" I asked, skipping small talk. He handed me the folder. Inside were lab results I didn't fully understand and a discharge summary that translated to congestive heart failure, uncontrolled diabetes, non-compliance with treatment. The phrase, "poor prognosis without significant lifestyle changes," leered from the page. "So this is your sympathy play," Liam said quietly. Daniel's eyes flashed. "This is my reality," he snapped. "The court dates, the stress, it's all making it worse. If Mia just confirms I didn't trick her, we both get out cleaner. I can focus on not dying. She can stop worrying they'll garnish her wages." "You forged my name," I said, the words tasting like metal. "You moved in with a pregnant woman and used my identity to fund your life. And you're asking me to lie because your heart hurts?" He flinched like I'd slapped him. "You think I haven't paid?" he asked. "That marriage blew up. I haven't seen my kid in years. My dad died without speaking to me. I've been running from one bad decision for half my life. I'm tired, Mia." His voice cracked on my name, and damn him, my eyes burned. "What would you do?" he whispered. "If the only way out of a mistake was someone you hurt?" Silence stretched, thick and awful. I opened my mouth, feeling the old instinct to rescue, to smooth, to take on weight that wasn't mine. Liam's hand found the small of my back, grounding me. For once, the urge to fix everything felt like a symptom, not a virtue. I realized if I said yes now, I might never forgive myself. We didn't give Daniel an answer that day. Liam steered the conversation to practicalities, court dates, legal representation, what exactly Daniel had told his attorney about me. I watched Daniel's version of events shift slightly every time he retold it, like a story being edited live for maximum sympathy. On the drive home, Liam gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles blanched. "You can't go into that courtroom without your own lawyer," he said. "And you definitely can't let his version stand uncontested." "I don't want to ruin his life," I said tiredly. "He ruined yours the first time," Liam replied. "This is just you putting your name back where it belongs." The next week was a blur of adulting I'd hoped to never experience. I took time off work under personal legal matter, which is HR speak for "we're not asking, but we're absolutely gossiping." Kayla recommended a lawyer she trusted from a foster case, and I found myself in a beige office listening to a woman named Patel explain the difference between civil liability and criminal fraud in terms I could almost follow. "Bottom line," she said, tapping a pen against a highlighted paragraph, "if you say you were aware and consenting, you expose yourself to more financial risk but limit criminal exposure for him. If you say you had no idea, you become the victim, but his case gets much worse. So either I pay with money and credit," I said, "or he pays with freedom." "Roughly, yes," she said. "There's also a third option. We present evidence he misrepresented your involvement, and we negotiate. But for that, we need everything. Emails, letters, any proof he was elsewhere when the documents were signed. Evidence. Proof." Words I used at work all the time suddenly felt like survival tools instead of paperwork. I texted Daniel that we needed to meet with both lawyers present. Rosa offered her dining room table as neutral ground, on the condition that she'd finally get to say her piece. Daniel's reply sounded like he knew this meeting might bury him. Rosa's dining room had seen every major event of my life. Birthdays, graduations, the time my cousin announced her divorce between the Eras and the Flan. It had never hosted a summit like this. Daniel sat at one end of the table, looking like a deflated version of the boy who used to charm my entire family. His lawyer, a slick man with a watch more expensive than my car, sat beside him. Patel sat next to me, legal pad ready. Liam took the chair at my other side, quiet but unmistakably present. Rosa hovered by the doorway, rosary in hand. We'd barely begun when Rosa cleared her throat. "Before you all talk in circles," she said, "there is someone else who should be here." She nodded toward the hallway. A girl, no, a young woman, stepped out. Maybe 17, maybe 19. Dark hair in a messy bun, camera strap around her neck. eyes that were a disorienting hybrid of mine and Daniel's. My lungs forgot their job. "This is Sophia," Rosa said. Her mother was a friend of mine. "She has questions too." Daniel went a color I'd never seen on a living person. "Rosa," he croaked. "What did you do?" "What you should have done years ago," she replied. Sophia slid into a chair opposite him, jaw set. "Hi, Dad," she said, the word landing like a slap. "Relax. I'm not here for money. I just want to know why my birth certificate has Mom's last name and some stranger's address that turns out to be this woman's." She jerked her chin toward me. The next hour was chaos distilled. Under Patel's steady questioning, Daniel admitted to more than he'd ever intended in one sitting. Yes, his father had pushed the marriage. Yes, he'd moved into the duplex with Melissa and the baby. Yes, the loan had been for equipment and back rent and medical bills. No, I had never been told or asked. "And the signature?" Patel pressed. "I traced it," he whispered. "From an old lease. I thought, she's got good credit. She's responsible. She'll be fine." I told myself I'd fix it before it caught up. Every eye in the room was on him, even the lawyers. He couldn't meet mine when he finally confessed the part that hurt the most. "I didn't come back for you," Daniel said, staring at the tablecloth. "I came back because the only way to keep this from becoming a criminal conviction was getting you to lie. You were always the one who covered for people. I was counting on that." There it was. Not love, not fate, not some grand cosmic reunion. Just math. Sophia let out a low, disgusted laugh. "So you used her twice," she said. "Once to get out of being a bad boyfriend, and once to get out of being a criminal." Patel summarized Daniel's admissions for the record, her pen moving like a metronome. His lawyer tried to interject, to spin, but even he seemed to sense the wind had shifted. "Given what we've heard," Patel said crisply, "my client will be entering as a victim of identity misuse. We'll cooperate fully. Any settlement money that would have gone to her will be redirected to clearing her credit and, if possible, compensating any other parties harmed by your actions." "Including me?" Sophia asked. Patel glanced at me. I nodded. "If you want that, we can talk," she said gently. "But that's your choice, not his." Liam squeezed my hand under the table. My palms were sweaty, but for the first time all week, I felt something like balance. Daniel's lawyer muttered about plea deals and mitigating circumstances. Rosa finally spoke again, voice sharp. "Mijo, this is what happens when you hide everything. The truth doesn't disappear, it grows teeth." When the meeting ended, it wasn't with hugs or absolution. It ended with court dates on paper, a list of next steps for Patel, and Daniel sitting alone at the table, staring at nothing. Outside, Liam walked me to the car. "You okay?" he asked. My phone buzzed with an email notification from work, an automatic reminder that my caseload had been reassigned temporarily while I dealt with my personal situation. I pictured the supervisors wondering if I could still be trusted with other people's crises when I couldn't keep my own history clean on paper. For the first time, I saw a truth might cost me more than him. Fall blurred into winter while the legal machine ground on. Patel negotiated, argued, and sent me drafts of statements that made my life sound like a case study. Daniel eventually took a plea that kept him out of prison but tethered him to probation, mandatory restitution, and a financial monitoring program that would have sent his younger self screaming for the hills. My role was clear: victim, not accomplice. Still, the word sat strangely on my tongue. Work was less forgiving. Technically, I hadn't done anything wrong, but the optics were messy. After a review of organizational needs, my supervisor offered me a transfer to a different unit with fewer crisis cases and more paperwork. It felt like a demotion wrapped in concern. In therapy, I learned to call what Daniel had done by its real names: fraud, manipulation, emotional abuse. I also learned to call what I'd done trying to keep the peace in my family what it was: self-erasure. Liam stayed, not in the dramatic, movie way, but in the quiet, everyday way that counts more. He made dinner when court ran late. He sat in waiting rooms with me. He held my hand when I met with a credit counselor who laid out a plan to rebuild what Daniel had cracked. Sophia texted sometimes. Photos of her city, her art, the dog she was saving up to adopt. She didn't ask me to be a parent. I didn't ask her to forgive Daniel on my behalf. We carved out a weird, delicate connection that belonged to just us, not him. Rosa started going to a support group for families of addicts and fraudsters, as she half-jokingly called it, and dragged me along once. Listening to strangers talk about boundaries like they were life vests made me realize how long I'd been treading water without one. As for Daniel, I saw him only in structured settings. Court, the occasional mandated mediation about restitution. He'd aged another decade in those months. Once, outside the courthouse, he tried to approach me without lawyers present. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "For all of it. Not just the loan." The apology landed on a heart that no longer needed it to move forward. I believed him, but that didn't mean I had to let him close. Sometimes I think about the girl I was at 18, tapping her foot 3 times at the bus stop like that could summon a future. If I could talk to her now, I wouldn't warn her away from Daniel completely. I'd just tell her that loving someone isn't enough reason to abandon yourself. People always say time heals everything, but they don't mention the paperwork. It took months to untangle my credit, years to fully unknot the story in my head. For so long, I'd framed my life as before Daniel and after Daniel, like he was some natural disaster. Turns out, I was the one who decided how much destruction counted as permanent. Viewers always ask, would you take him back if he really changed? Here's the thing. Change isn't an apology, and an apology isn't a time machine. Daniel can become the healthiest, most honest version of himself and still not earn the right to sit on my couch and joke with Liam about sports. What I did take back was my narrative. I stopped telling the story where I was the girl abandoned on a Tuesday and started telling the one where I was the woman who answered her own door, who investigated, who chose not to be drafted into someone else's cover-up. If you're watching this because an old ex slid into your messages or showed up at your doorstep with big eyes and bigger problems, here's my practical advice. Before you say yes to anything, write down what you're afraid of losing. Your job? Your home? Your reputation? Your peace? Put that list somewhere you can see it when nostalgia starts airbrushing the past. Then ask yourself a question I wish I'd learned earlier. Does helping this person require you to lie to yourself, to others, or to the version of you who finally healed? These days, when I tap my foot at the bus stop, it's just a habit, not a superstition. I build a life that doesn't hinge on anyone knocking at my door. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It just means you choose what comes inside.